A few weeks ago, something unsettling happened to me at the Old Town Museum. I'm James, a local history enthusiast and part-time tour guide. At 34, I often found myself lost in the past, especially while preparing for our upcoming exhibition on Victorian artifacts. That night was typical just me, the dusty relics, and a musty air that felt thickened with old stories. While rearranging displays, I stumbled across an old portrait hidden in the back of a storage closet. The man in the painting had a disturbing smile. It was wide and seemed too bright for his dark eyes. I got a chill as I felt something shift in the room. Looking around, I saw only shadows and the backdrop of forgotten history. I tried to brush it off and focus on my work. Over the next days, things felt off. Items were misplaced: an old lantern where my maps used to be, a dust-covered book that hadn't been there before. I heard the creaks of floorboards more than usual. I stood still one afternoon, heart pounding. Was it just the museum settling? Felt like a presence lingered in the air, waiting and watching. As the exhibition day neared, I started seeing shadows in the glass cases. Some reflections looked like figures darting behind me. I lost sense of time while working late. One night, in the dim light, I noticed the man's eyes in the portrait seemed to follow me. I felt clammy and scared. My instincts screamed to leave, but I didn't. I was drawn to find out more. I dived into the library archives. I learned that the man in the portrait had ties to local disappearances in the late 1800s. I wanted to shrug it off, but that knowledge stuck to my mind like tar. Each visit to the museum grew darker, and that smile echoed in my thoughts. The air felt colder, the drafts sharper, like ice crawling down my spine. On the final prep night, I stood face to face with the portrait. The room was dim and eerie. I swear I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. My heart sank. That S when I heard a whisper. It was faint but clear, almost like wind but eerily distinct. I was frozen, staring at his eyes. Still in shock, I said, "Are you okay?" I expected nothing. My voice echoed back, swallowed by emptiness. I left the museum, racing heart pounding. I thought I would escape, but something strange pulled me back. Just before the exhibition opened, a chill gripped me. Then, I heard it, a voice clear as day. "Why are you here?" I turned around, but no one was there. I stood alone, panic setting in. I still can't shake that smile or the chilling voice. What did I really uncover in the quiet halls of the museum? The whispers and shadows remain a mystery I don't feel ready to let go of. The next morning, I woke with the portrait's eerie smile still burned into my mind. My alarm rang, but I was reluctant to get out of bed. Pushing myself up, I glanced at the clock. I had to get to the museum, but the thought of facing the cool, dark halls made my stomach turn. Still, I knew I wouldn't find peace until I followed through with my research. After a quick breakfast, I arrived at the museum just as the sun was peeking over the rooftops. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of old wood and paper welcoming me with a sense of comfort that was swiftly overshadowed by foreboding. I headed straight for the archives to dig deeper. I had to know more about the man in the portrait, the one with the smile that clawed at my thoughts. Hours slipped by as I pored over dusty newspapers and records. I discovered articles documenting strange occurrences tied to that man, Charles Whitaker. Some claimed he had been a local hero. Others whispered of his obsession with a hidden treasure. Either way, the common thread was unsettling. People had disappeared in his presence, vanishing without a trace. The last article I found was dated in 1885, revealing how he vanished too. There was no explanation, no remains, just silence. My pulse quickened. It felt like I was closer to a final answer, yet more questions swirled in my mind. Why had he been at the center of so many mysteries? As I finished reading, I felt a chill run through the building, a draft that felt like fingers brushing against my skin. I glanced around, but the archive room was empty. The flickering lights made me anxious. I shook my head, trying to clear my mind of the dread. Then, I heard a soft thud from the exhibition hall. My heart raced. I hadn't seen anyone else come in. I told myself it was just the old building settling. That's what I hoped. But curiosity pulled me forward. I stepped through the door into the exhibition space. The room was lit with harsh overhead lights, emphasizing the shadows lurking in the corners. Everything seemed in place, but I could feel the air charged, like a storm was brewing. The portrait still hung on the wall, a sinister presence among the carefully curated Victorian relics. That when I saw it. The corner of the frame, slightly ajar, as if someone had nudged it. I approached slowly, heart hammering in my chest. I reached out, hesitating before pulling the frame open. Inside, a piece of paper slipped free and fluttered to the floor. I bent down to pick it up. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The words were in a hurried scrawl, difficult to read. "Find me in the shadows." Before I could process what it meant, the lights blinked, and the temperature dropped. I felt an overwhelming sensation, as if something dark loomed just behind me. I turned around, but the hall was empty again. Just shadows and whispers. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind the exhibitions. I jumped. The sound was too close, too real. Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I took a step toward the noise. I needed answers. What else was hiding in the museum's shadowy past? My resolve hardened. I wouldn't back down now. But as I stepped deeper into the murky space, dread gnawed at the edges of my mind. What was it I was about to discover? I stepped cautiously around the exhibits, straining my ears for any further sounds. The crash had come from the far end of the hall, near a display of Victorian-era furniture. It seemed absurd to investigate, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to be here, finding answers. The room's shadows deepened as I moved forward. I scanned the walls, half expecting something to leap out at me. As I reached the end of the display, I noticed the furniture, an old, ornate chair and a side table, were out of place. The chair was tipped backward, and the table had shifted, revealing a thin gap beneath it. "What the hell?" I muttered under my breath. With a quick glance back to ensure I was still alone, I crouched down, peering beneath the table. My breath caught as I noticed something gleaming in the darkness, a small brass key. It was tarnished, but undeniably there, almost shining with malevolent intent. I reached for it, my fingers brushing against the cool metal. As I pulled it out, a sense of urgency washed over me. What was it a key to? I felt a tug of curiosity mixed with fear. Just then, I heard footsteps drawing closer, heavy, deliberate. I froze, holding the key tightly in my palm. The noise echoed, growing closer, the rhythm matching my quickening heartbeat. I ducked behind the furniture, my mind racing as I peeked around to see who it was. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and gaunt, dressed in a coat that looked decades old. He peered around the hall, his eyes dark and unyielding, scanning for life with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, his head snapped in my direction. In an instant, I darted back, heart pounding in my throat. I had to think fast. Why was he here? Was he connected to the portrait? What did he want? I held the key tightly, unwilling to make any sound. As I watched him move closer, I felt pressed back against the wall. It was instinct. I had to get out, but something about this felt monumental. I was on the edge of uncovering something significant. The man spoke, his voice low and raspy. "You shouldn't have come here." I strained to hear him over my breathing, gnawing on his words. What does that even mean? I whispered to myself, too afraid to speak out loud. Just then, a loud crash reverberated from farther inside the museum. Both of us turned toward the noise, the man's expression darkening. He hesitated, then bolted toward the sound. In that fleeting moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't let him slip away. Whatever he knew, I needed to find out. As I followed him deeper into the museum, adrenaline surged through me. The shadows loomed larger, pulsing with energy. What secret had I stumbled upon? And what awaited me in the darkness? My heart raced at the thought. I had to find out what lay ahead. But I also knew I couldn't turn back. Not now. I hurried after the man, my footsteps muffled against the thick carpet. The museum felt like a labyrinth, each twist and turn carrying a weight of history. The loud crash echoed again, making me jump, but my curiosity pushed me forward. I rounded the corner into a dimly lit gallery. The shadows tangled around elaborate displays of ancient artifacts. I instinctively lowered my head, pressing against the cold wall as I searched for the gaunt figure who had captured my attention. Then I saw him, standing at the far end of the room, illuminated by a flickering overhead light. He loomed near a display of aged paintings, eyes locked onto something out of my view. I barely dared to breathe, my heart racing. "What are you looking at?" I whispered to myself. As I shifted slightly to get a better angle, I noticed the paintings he was observing. They depicted unsettling scenes, figures in period clothing, their faces twisted into expressions of agony or fear. A shiver ran down my spine. Suddenly, the man straightened up, his gaze darting over his shoulder. Panic flooded through me. Had he sensed me? My instinct told me to retreat, but deeper curiosity held me in place. I was on the cusp of understanding something vital. That S when I saw it. A shadow darted behind the frames, a fleeting glimpse of movement. My breath hitched. It wasn't he, just the man in the room. Something else was hiding among these paintings. I fought the urge to flee. Drawing a deep breath, I took a cautious step forward. "Hello?" I called out, my voice almost a whisper. The man turned sharply, his dark eyes narrowing. "Didn't I tell you to leave?" His voice was low and chilling, making my skin prickle. Before I could reply, the shadow reappeared, not behind the paintings, but flitting into the room. It was a small, slender figure, barely visible in the dim light. I squinted, trying to make it out. "Wait," I shouted instinctively. The apparition paused, glancing my way. I saw a flash of white, a face, before it slipped into another gallery. The man jerked toward the figure, eyes wide with anger. "No, don't!" He trailed off, rushing past me in pursuit. With my heart thudding in my chest, I hesitated only a moment before following him. I couldn't let this chance slip away. This was madness, but I felt a connection, as if I were unlocking something lost in time. I raced into the next gallery, where the shadows seemed to dance along the walls. Ahead, the thin figure disappeared around the corner. I could hear my breath echoing in the silence, and I felt the gravity of the moment pulling me forward. Then, a sudden scream echoed through the halls, cutting through the stillness. I froze, my blood running cold. This was no ordinary encounter. Someone was in trouble. I gripped the key tightly in my pocket, making a silent vow. I needed to find out what was happening, even if it meant confronting whatever darkness awaited me. But with the scream fading, I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Moving deeper into the museum, I pushed against the fear rising within me. I had to keep going, no turning back now. I stepped into the next gallery, heart racing as the walls seemed to close in around me. The glow from the emergency exit sign illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows over the various displays. The scream echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder that something was wrong. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time, hoping to get a response. There was nothing but silence, thick and oppressive. I forced myself forward, eyes scanning for the slender figure. I could hear my footsteps now, urgent and sharp against the floor. I needed to find out what happened. A door creaked open on my left. My eyes darted to it, heart leaping in my chest. I pressed my back against the edge of a display case, forcing myself to breathe. What if it was the man? Or worse, what if it was something else? As I peered around the corner, I caught sight of the man, crouched over something on the floor. My instincts told me to hide, but every curiosity I had urged me to move closer. Was he hurt? I edged forward, barely making a sound. Just as I reached the doorway, I saw it. The small figure stood nearby, facing away from me. It looked like a child in a tattered dress. My heart twisted in my chest. What was going on? "Stop!" I shouted, stepping into the room. The man looked up sharply, surprise flashing in his eyes. "No, don't!" He lunged toward the child, reaching out a hand. But it was too late. The moment I called out, the child spun around. I gasped as I caught a glimpse of its face, pale, with dark eyes that seemed to pierce straight through me. There was no warmth, just an emptiness that made my stomach churn. Before I could process what I was seeing, the child darted toward a darkened corner, disappearing into the shadows. The man stood frozen, confusion written all over his face. "What did you see?" he demanded, breathless. I don't know," I stammered, still shaken. "It looked like a girl. Where did she go?" He glanced back in the direction the figure had vanished. "This isn't good," he muttered, shaking his head. "We have to catch her. She's the key to this." He moved past me, eyes blazing with determination, and I felt myself following. My fear morphed into a strange mix of dread and exhilaration. Whatever was happening here felt larger than both of us. We traversed deeper into the maze of exhibits, the air heavy with the scent of old wood and dust. Occasionally, I would catch flashes of movement from the corners of my eyes, but each time I turned, there would only be emptiness. Then another scream pierced the silence. This one felt different, a raw cry of desperation. I felt my pulse quicken with each step we took. We couldn't be too late. Just as we rounded a final corner, I caught sight of the child again. She was standing next to an ancient painting, fingers brushing its surface. The scene depicted a festivity, but the figures had unsettling expressions, eyes eerily alive. "Stop!" I shouted again, but the girl didn't move. Instead, she turned her head slowly, locking her gaze with mine. Time froze for a moment. Couldn't look away. Whatever mystery I thought I was unraveling had just turned into a nightmare. And just like that, everything went dark. I jolted awake, breathless. My heart slammed against my chest like a drum. I was sprawled on the floor of the gallery, disoriented and nauseated. Confusion wrapped around me like a fog. The man was nearby, leaning against the wall, his face pale. Took a moment to collect my thoughts. I scrambled to my feet, glancing around. "Where is she?" I gasped. The room felt smaller now, the shadows creeping closer. "I don't know," he replied, his voice shaky. I was hoping he paused, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "She can't just disappear like that." The darkness of the gallery pressed in, a weight of dread that seemed almost sentient. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "We have to find her," I insisted, my voice stronger than I felt. He nodded, though the fear in his eyes betrayed him. "This way," he said, pointing toward a narrow hallway that led deeper into the museum. The air felt colder, like a storm was brewing just out of sight as we moved forward. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The paintings along the walls seemed to peer into my soul, their eyes following my every step. "Do you think she was real?" I asked, trying to piece together what had happened. "I don't know, but I've seen things in this museum that shouldn't exist. Things that defy explanation." He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "If she is real, she might be in danger." Before I could respond, a flicker of light caught my eye. From the end of the hall, a soft glow emanated, drawing me closer like a moth to a flame. "What is that?" I whispered, slowing down. "Stay back," he warned. "Could be a trap." But I couldn't help myself. My feet moved before my brain caught up. I stepped out into the light, realizing it was coming from an old, ornate mirror. Intricate carvings framed the glass, and the surface rippled like liquid. I reached out tentatively, fingers brushing against the cold glass. "What's happening?" the man shouted, his voice strained. And that S, when I saw it reflected in the mirror, was the child. Her dark eyes locked onto mine, smiling. A smile that sent chills racing down my spine. "Did you see that?" I cried. I turned to him, but when I turned back, the mirror showed only my own terrified reflection. "Where did she go?" "Step away from it," he urged, panic snapping through his tone. I hesitated, caught between the mirror's eerie allure and the man's warning. Then the screaming returned, distorted and echoing from somewhere far away. My heart raced, adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to get out of here," I shouted, but he didn't move. The man reached for the mirror, as if drawn by an unseen force. "No!" I screamed. I lunged for him, grabbing his arm, trying to pull him back. In that moment, I realized something else. The reflection wasn't just a mirror. It was a portal. I could feel the energy pulsing around it, a living thing. Then everything shifted. The air crackled, and for a split second, the room began to tilt. I shouted again, "We have to go!" But what awaited us was a darkness deeper than before. I had no idea what we were stepping into, but the urgency burned within me. Whatever lay ahead, we wouldn't face it alone. We stepped through the threshold of the light, my heart pounding as I braced for whatever came next. Instead of terror, there was a strange sense of calm. I blinked and found myself standing in an unfamiliar room, filled with dust and shadows. The air was thick and still, like time had stopped. "Where are we?" I whispered, glancing around. The man was gone, and loneliness settled around me like a shroud. A wooden table stood in the center, cluttered with old books and curious artifacts. Each object seemed to whisper secrets of the past. I picked up a book, its cover worn and cracked, the title barely legible. "The Lost Ones," it read in faded gold letters. I was drawn in, flipping through pages filled with sketches of familiar faces, mingled with strange creatures. That S, when I heard it, a soft giggle echoed from somewhere in the corner. My heart skipped a beat. I felt a surge of hope, the sound familiar yet haunting. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The giggle came again, and this time, it was followed by the patter of small feet. I turned, but there was nothing, just shadows dancing along the walls. I tried to suppress the rising panic. I stepped closer to the wall, feeling my way along the ancient stones. Then the cold glass of another mirror caught my eye. Hesitating, I approached it, dreading what I might see. But this mirror reflected not me, but an image of the hallway we had just left. The dim light glowed from the frame, and I saw the man standing there, looking confused and alarmed. "Hey!" I shouted, banging my palm against the glass. "I'm here." But he couldn't hear me. I was trapped on one side, while he floundered on the other. Suddenly, the laughter returned, more vibrant this time. I turned around sharply. "Show yourself," I commanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. From behind the table, she emerged small and delicate, her dark hair framing her face like a halo. It was the child from the mirror, her smile wide and eyes glinting with mischief. "You found me," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. "Where did you go?" I asked, stepping closer. "We've been looking for you. It's not safe here." Her laughter rang like chimes, light and airy. "I'm safe. They can't see me here." "Who can't see you?" I pressed, urgency creeping into my voice. But before she could answer, the room began to tremble, and shadows multiplied around us, swirling like a storm. I felt a pull, a strong force trying to drag me back toward the mirror, toward the man who couldn't reach me. "Stay with me," I shouted, panic surging. "Don't go." The child faltered, confusion washing over her face. As if sensing my fear, her smile faded, revealing something darker hidden beneath. Then, in an instant, the ground split open beneath my feet. I clung to the table as waves of darkness crashed over us. The child screamed, her figure flickering as the shadows threatened to devour her. That S when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her go again. I had to act. "Take my hand," I shouted to her, reaching out. But just as my fingers brushed against hers, a blinding light exploded around us, and then everything went dark. I gasped as I felt cold air rush over me, and the darkness cracked like glass. I was suddenly sprawled out on a wooden floor, panting. The scent of musty books filled my nose, and when I opened my eyes, I found myself back in the room, the child nowhere in sight. "Where are you?" I shouted, but my voice echoed back in silence. Panic bubbled in my chest. I got to my feet, scanning the dust-covered corners. Nothing seemed to have changed, yet something felt distinctly off. I stumbled toward the table again, my heart racing. The book I'd been holding, the one with the cracked cover, lay open on the floor. I knelt down, studying the pages. The sketches showed faces I recognized, friends, family, yet their eyes weren't right. They seemed hollow, lifeless. Then, I noticed something odd at the bottom of the last page. Scrawled in angry handwriting were the words, "They take, they take, they take." A chill ran down my spine. What was happening here? Suddenly, I heard a faint sound, soft weeping. My heart leaped at the familiarity. I turned to follow it, moving toward a doorway hidden in the shadows. "Hello?" I called again. "Is someone there?" I stepped through the doorway, my gut nodding at the unknown. The weeping grew louder, filling the hallway like a mournful song. As I walked further, the air weighed heavily around me, and the walls began to shift, closing in on me. In the distance, I spotted a figure crouched down. "Is that you?" I whispered, hoping it was the child. As I approached, my heart sank. It wasn't a child at all. It was a woman, her face obscured by matted hair. She looked tragically familiar, her eyes sunken and brimming with sorrow. "Please, help me," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "It wants to take me too." "Who?" I asked, stepping closer. But even as I spoke, I felt the shadows swirl around me again, thicker this time, almost alive. Then it hit me. The laughter, the shadows, the dark hand pulling me back. It wasn't just about finding the child. There was something else, something darker lurking in this room. I had to get out. But as I turned to run, a cold hand caught my wrist. "You can't leave yet," the woman said, her grip tightening. My breath quickened as I fought against her hold. "It will take you next." "I won't stay," I shouted, ripping my arm free. I dashed past her, racing back towards the doorway. The shadows hissed, reaching for me, pushing me back. I could hear the woman's voice rising behind me, blending with the cries around us. Just when I thought I'd break free, an immense pressure slammed against my back, sending me crashing to the ground. "Stay!" The shadows roared, the darkness wrapping tightly around my legs. That's when I noticed something glimmering on the floor, an object half buried in dust. A silver locket. My fingers brushed against it, and in that moment, the sound of laughter erupted all around me. The child was back, her giggle filled with warmth and mischief. "Unlock the past," she cried, her voice echoing like wind through the hallway. I grasped the locket, my heart racing as a response surged through me. The shadows hesitated, a fleeting moment of confusion. I knew what I had to do. I locked eyes with the woman, who still knelt in grief. "This ends now." With a swift motion, I opened the locket, unleashing light into the darkness. The shadows screamed, and the room shook. Then everything went white once more. Just before I lost consciousness, I could hear the child's laughter fading. "You might want to look behind you," she teased. And then nothing but silence. I woke with a start, the wooden floor cool against my cheek. The air was heavy and thick, and I could still smell the mustiness of the room. Struggling to sit up, I quickly scanned my surroundings. Was I still at the museum? The shadows were gone, and sunlight filtered in through a cracked window, casting long lines across scattered dust. I felt disoriented, as if I had stepped into a different time. My breath came in quick bursts. I needed to find that child. Where was she? I stood up, shaking off the remnants of fear, and walked toward the doorway I'd fled through. It was still there, but now it led to a narrow staircase. Curiosity tugged at me. I had no answers, but I had to know what was up those stairs. As I climbed, the air grew colder. I reached the top, and there was a door. It looked old and weathered, as if it hadn't been opened in decades. Hesitating briefly, I pushed it open with a loud creak. The room was unremarkable, just a small, dim space filled with old trunks and eerie portraits hanging on the walls. But something pulled me toward a particular painting. I stepped closer, inspecting the faces frozen in time. They all smiled, yet the smiles felt wrong. They seemed to be hiding something, their eyes glimmering with secrets. Then I saw it. In the corner, barely noticeable, was a small detail. The date, 1885. I blinked hard. Was that when the museum was established? I felt a strange connection to that year, almost as if it were whispering to me. Suddenly, a voice broke through my thoughts. "They will come for you too." I whirled around, my heart pounding. It was the woman from before, her face still obscured, but her eyes were filled with urgency now. "You have to leave." "Why?" I asked, my voice shaky. "What do you mean?" She took a step toward me, but the shadows crept in, as if catching her in a grip of despair. "They're waking up. The painting, it holds their spirits." I could feel the weight of her words. "Who are you?" I pressed. "What do you want from me?" "Find the key. Find the locket." Her voice trembled, and then she gasped, looking past me. "No, don't turn around." I hesitated. My instincts screamed at me not to look. But the laughter from earlier echoed in my mind, mixing with the shadows that danced closer. I had to know. As I turned, I found myself face to face with a figure emerging from the wall. It was obscured, like a living shadow. Fear seized my heart. I stumbled back, almost tripping over the trunk at my feet. "Unlock the past." The child's voice chimed again. But where? I lost track of where I was and what I was looking for. Then, I spotted the locket still gleaming in the corner of the small room. My hands moved instinctively to grab it. The moment I touched it, the room exploded with light again, and I could feel the shadows pull at me like 1,000 hands trying to drag me back. I clutched the locket tightly, the weight of it grounding me in this madness. "What is this?" I shouted into the chaos. But all I could hear was the echoing of laughter, fading. Then everything stopped. The shadows stilled, and for a moment, I felt safe. But I could sense something stirring nearby, a new presence on the horizon. Before I could gather my thoughts, I turned, and just outside the doorway stood a child with a crooked smile. She stared at me through hollow eyes, and I felt the chill of dread return. "Are you ready to play?" she asked, her voice filled with darkness. And then everything went black. I woke up again, but this time, it was like I'd been submerged in water for too long. My ears buzzed, and my vision swam before me. When I blinked hard enough to clear the fog, I found myself in a different part of the museum, back in the main hall where the exhibition was set up. The portraits hung silently on the walls, their eyes now vacant and seemingly indifferent. The smell of dust was overwhelming, and a palpable heaviness filled the air, making my heart race. Had I really been gone? And where was the man? Or the child? I leapt to my feet, panic clawing at my insides. The museum felt vast and empty, devoid of life. The only sound was the distant creaking of floorboards and the gentle hum of the old lights overhead. Everything felt eerily familiar yet wrong, like a distorted memory that had pulled me back. I glanced at the portrait of Charles Whitaker, whose smile now appeared almost mocking. Had I changed things? Was he still here, lurking in shadows, watching me? My hands trembled as I approached, fearing that vibrant smile might flicker to life at any moment. I just needed to think clearly, to remember what had happened. "Find the key," I whispered, somehow thinking that would ground me. The locket buried in my pocket felt heavier, like a weight reminding me of its power. I turned and hurried, aiming for the exit, but as I did, an odd sound caught my attention, the soft whisper of giggles flitting through the empty halls. "No, no, no. Don't do this," I murmured, shaking my head. I wanted to run, to escape the nostalgia of the haunting laughter that echoed through the gallery, but that sense of curiosity entangled itself around my mind. I had to know what was playing out here. Fueled by dread and curiosity, I veered toward the source of the laughter. As I moved deeper into the museum, I caught flickers of pale figures darting in and out of shadows. Each movement felt alive, almost sentient, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me. "Show yourself," I called out, half a plea, half a challenge. Silence swallowed my words. Then, abruptly, the echoes of distant screams echoed through the halls. A chill swept over me, felt immediate, urgent. I turned, backtracking, hoping to escape whatever horror awaited me. But I found myself face to face with that ornate mirror again, the one that felt like a portal, beckoning me with its glowing presence. The child's laughing visage flickered and faded within. I could nearly hear her voice saying, "You shouldn't have left, James." Not knowing if I was about to confront terror or fulfill a long-awaited understanding, I steadied myself. Stepping closer, I hesitated, filled with indecision. Should I dive back into the unknown or attempt to move forward in this familiar nightmare? I thought about the locket, how it had held power before. But what would that power unlock? I raised it before the mirror, expecting something more. Laughter erupted again. The child becoming a phantom of light, desperately reaching for me. Please, you must. I faltered but ultimately took a step forward. The mirror's depth radiating luminosity. I felt an invisible tug that pulled me into the glass. The room spiraled around me like a carousel, the walls melting as darkness ebbed away until I stood back in the dusty room with the table of artifacts. The shadows had returned, and they seemed more intense, suffocatingly close. The girl's giggle echoed, mixing with the woman's desperate cries. You mustn't misunderstand. They want you too. Their words warred for dominance in my mind. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my wrist. I shuddered, thinking I was about to face terror again, but it was just the cool touch of the locket against my palm grounding me. I glanced down at it, remembering the child's insistence. Maybe it held a way to untangle my fate from this dismal place. With newfound resolve, I opened it, a warm glow enveloping me before the world ignited in blinding light. When the brightness withdrew, I found myself standing back outside the museum's entrance, slivers of sunlight piercing through the trees. Felt fresh, a hint of normalcy spilling over me. But as I turned back to the building, the ominous structure loomed before me as if confidently revealing the last shred of its secrets, teasing me. The front doors creaked as if signaling that the shadows had been reshuffled, leaving questions floating in the air. What had really happened? I asked aloud. I felt the child's presence there, lingering though invisible, even with safety surrounding me. That wicked smile, the laughter, and the whispers remained in my thoughts, hinting at stories I wasn't sure I'd ever fully uncover. I could feel the unyielding weight of the past sharpening my perspective, planting new roots alongside my unease. I turned and took my first steps away from the museum, but something nagged at me with each footfall. I might have escaped, but the shadows were still there, lurking still in intertwined tales of the forgotten. For me, it was as if understanding had slipped through my fingers, leaving a sense of longing with unanswered echoes that would follow me into the future. As I walked away, I put a hand to my pocket, feeling the locket, knowing that the past was never far behind.